is Ralph Franklin Tipton.
And your date of birth?
I was born in Worth, West Virginia, on January the 22nd, 1897.
Okay.
We lived in Worth for several years,
Do you know who?
but I do not know what the background was at that time.
Do you know who lived in your family at that time? Who was in your family?
Well,
Give me their names.
There was Mom, well, I'll just say Mom, Pop, Emma, Uncle Frank, and I. Annie lived a couple miles away.
That was when you were born.
That was at the time, yeah.
How old was your mother? About when
Around
you were born? She must have been
39, I think. Around that, I'm pretty sure. 39.
So that's why Anne was so much older.
Yes, Annie was much older, and Emma was much older than I. They were not born down there. They were born up in Pennsylvania before the family moved to West Virginia.
Oh, where were they born in Pennsylvania?
Tremont.
Oh, that's Tremont.
Tremont.
Okay.
That's where they were from.
What was your father's occupation when you were born? Do you know?
When I was born, he was a sort of a superintendent of the Roanoke Coal and Coke Company mine in Worth, West Virginia, where I was born.
So was he doing that sort of work in Tremont also with the
Well,
mines? And
yes, before then he had been a miner up in Tremont, and they had some sort of union trouble up there, and he didn't want to get involved in it. So he and several of the other relatives went to West Virginia, which at that time was just the coal mines were just opening up in the Pocahontas coal fields, which is a soft bituminous coal.
And so he took the whole family.
They took the family and went down there.
Was that Uncle Frank his brother?
No, Uncle Frank was Mom's brother, my mother's brother.
And was he?
But he probably lived with us practically all the time.
Did he work with the mines also?
No, he wasn't. He didn't work in the mines. He worked at various jobs around.
Right.
And but I never knew him very well until we moved to North Fork.
Okay. Where did you move?
No, now wait a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. When we moved to Rolfe, he was with us when we moved to Rolfe.
And that's the one you said was a mile away from.
That was about a mile away from where I was born. Yes. And when we moved to Rolfe, at that time Pop was out of the coal business, coal mining. I don't know just exactly how many years after I was born, but he got out of the coal mining business and got into the saloon business, of all things.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and he and another man, or a couple other men, had a saloon down in a place by the name of Davie.
That was a town?
That was the town, Davie, D-A-V-Y. That was the town, and that was while we lived in Rolfe, because he used to ride from Davie to Rolfe on horseback with the weekly receipts, which was a horseback ride of about 20 miles.
So he went back and forth every day, or he stayed
no,
down there?
He stayed there. He'd come home about once a week.
And then So it was,
Then at that time, we moved, when we moved to Rolfe, we moved right next door to where Annie lived. Here,
was she married? Is that
yeah,
what
she was married, yes, she was married at that time. And her husband, Walker Burns, worked for the Rolfe Coal and Coke Company as a bookkeeper. And I just remember some of the things around Rolfe was, in fact, it was the first place where I went to school, in a
So-
one-room schoolhouse.
So when you moved there, you were preschool, and then you went
Well,
to school while
yes,
you were.
that's right. That was the first schooling I had. The first school I went to was in Rolfe,
Right.
and we lived there for I don't know how many years, and well, we had a few experiences there too. In fact, we were washed out of, not washed out, but driven out of our home by the flooding Elkhorn River one spring, and all we had that was put in a clothes basket, and we fled to the hills, and we spent the rest of the day up in the hills until the water went down, that we could get back in our house. But luckily, we were not flooded out. It come within a foot of getting into our house, but it did get into Annie's place next door because they were lower. We were up on pilings, but they were lower, but they got it on the first floor.
So she got some things ruined.
Yeah, she had some of her carpets and some of her furniture was ruined, but they got over it.
Was the house? Do you remember the house there at all? The house at Rolfe?
I don't remember much about it, no.
Because we were talking about, well, Nan and I were talking about inventions and what was the first house that had, would they have indoor plumbing?
Not there.
Not at that place.
No.
And you had
No.
oil lamps that you used? Did
We
you have
had
gas
oil lamps and we had a what they call I forget the name of the heater, but it was a big round stove, and it was a coal burner. And then we had portable kerosene heaters. A kerosene heater that we used to take upstairs when we go to bed at night and to heat up the room a little bit.
Right.
But that thing caught fire one time and Emma threw it out the window, out in the snow.
Was Emma in school then too? Or was she was still school
Yeah,
age?
yeah. But she was way ahead of me.
How many years older is she than you?
Oh, I don't know, I forget just how many.
She was the middle child.
Yeah. I was a Johnny come lately. And, but I can't remember too much of Rolfe, except that one episode there. And we had a bulldog, and they had another bulldog over at the store, and they never got along too well. They used to fight every once in a while. And we'd have a time to get them apart.
Right.
But this bulldog had a funny habit. We had trains running up through there, coal trains and passenger trains, and whenever he'd see a train coming up, he'd start running alongside the engine. Just like
a car,
the dogs run alongside of a car. Nowadays, you run alongside this engine.
Right.
So I don't know much about that until
Well, were the trains right in the middle of town, like?
no, over
No?
towards one side, on the other hill.
Did people run out
Well,
run out to see the trains or not?
They used to stop at Rolfe there, but they didn't have a regular station, but it was just a stop. And of course the creek, the Elkhorn Creek, was between our place. We lived down what they call the bottom, down at the foot of the hill, and the train was on the other side of the creek, the other side of Elkhorn Creek. There was the railroad right-of-way was on the other side.
Right.
And that's how he used to go through the creek and chase these trains. But And I can't remember too much of my childhood there.
You don't remember, do you remember anything about school there or not too much?
No, not too much. I don't remember, I don't even remember who I went to school with there at the time.
Did you go, did you belong to a church there? Did you remember going
No,
to a church there? at
no,
all?
we had the closest church that we had was up in Arlington, which was above Worth, where we lived.
Right, right.
And we never got up there very often, except once in a while to the services up there.
Right.
Because they didn't have services every Sunday like they do anymore, like they do now. Just have, once in a while, a preacher would come through there and they'd have a service. And we'd go to church, but otherwise we didn't.
That's how they got a
But not
good
until-
crowd.
Yeah, not until I got to North Fork that we had any church activities at all.
Right.
Then in 1904, we moved to North Fork. Pop had built this home down there, and it was just about, not quite completed when we went into it.
Oh, so he was having it built
He
while
was
you were
having it built
living
while we were living
Rolfe?
in Rolfe.
Did
Rolfe.
you own the house in Rolfe too, or were you just
No,
renting?
it was a company house.
Oh, okay.
ROLFE was the name of the company. Rolfe Coal and Coke Company.
So he had it in mind though to move to North Fork.
Oh, yes,
That
yeah,
was
because
the plan.
he used to pass through North Fork on his way up from Davie. On his way up from Davie by horseback.
So he wanted to move to North Fork to be
Then he-
closer to Davie.
Well, he wanted to move to North Fork because North Fork was a junction. The main line of the Norfolk and Western went right through North Fork, and we were on a branch line. We were on what they call the North Fork Hollow branch line,
Right.
because all along the Norfolk and Western, from Bluefield all the way down to the lower end of the county, the coal mines were not more than about a mile or so apart. And they all were along this main line of the Norfolk and Western, and at each one of these coal places, they'd have a branch line running in so that they could pick up the coal and run it out to the main line.
Okay, so
So when we moved down to North Fork, we had all our furniture. We had to have a box car shifted up to the where they used to load the coke ovens, and then we'd have to take all our furniture on a wagon, horse and wagon, 2 horses on a wagon,
right.
and haul it down to this coke place and load it on the box car. Then in turn the box car was shifted from this place down to a siding at North Fork. And then you had to get another
Okay.
horse and wagon to haul it up or else carry it up. Most of it was carried up to our place where we lived on the side of the hill.
And you were about 8 years old then, I guess.
Around
when this
that
happened.
time, I think let's see, that was in 1904, 7, I was around 8, yes, 8 or 10. Around 8 years of age, I guess.
Right.
Because I remember one incident in hauling this furniture down to the place where it was loaded on the box car. We had a china closet, an all glass china closet, and it was on this wagon, and Uncle Frank was on the back, up on the top of it, trying to steady it, and something scared the horses, and he ran away. Oh boy, oh boy. Luckily, nothing was broken, but of course all the bric-a-brac was out of the thing, but it was just a plain china closet with all this glass on it. But luckily, nothing got broken.
Right.
Okay.
I have it back on now. Tell me what you were just telling me about your father and getting involved, in 1902.
1902, he got involved in politics.
In Davie?
No, in Welsh. West Virginia. That was
The
just,
county seat, I guess.
that was the county seat of McDowell County. And Davie was just about 5 miles below Welsh. Now Welsh, from where we lived in North Fork, was about 13, 14 miles. And, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but
Right. Well, I wonder, do you know why he decided to go into politics?
No,
You
I
wouldn't have
don't know,
known.
no.
Did he have that kind of personality?
well,
Yeah.
he more or less, yes, and he was a very good mixer, very good. And of course, being in the saloon business there for a while, he got to know an awful lot of the politicians down around Welsh, which was the county seat.
Right.
And that's how he got into politics. As far as I know, I don't know any of the details at all.
Do you know if he was successful in the saloon business? Was that being
Well,
successful, or he was too tired of that?
No, I think he just wanted to get out of that.
Right.
He didn't like it in the first place. I don't think he liked it in the first place. But when he come out of the mines, that was about the only thing that he could get it.
Maybe your mother didn't
Get
like
started.
it. Maybe your mom didn't like
I
it
don't
either.
think she did either, because she was very, very straight-laced. And
I mean,
but-
she wasn't even used to West Virginia, so she probably
no,
had to
more or
get
less,
used to-
no. But they managed all right.
Right. Okay, so now we're at your house in North Fork.
In North Fork, you know,
How many
they finally.
tell me how many steps it
They
was.
finally,
to
they
that house.
finally got the furniture up to our house, which is about from the pavement up to our place was around 80-some steps,
And that was a big house.
and that was a big house. That was let's see, 4, 8, 2, 10 room, at least 10 rooms.
And he was still working in the saloon
Center
business.
center hall house with about 10 rooms.
Did that one have indoor plumbing? Yeah.
Indoor, oh yes, we had indoor plumbing, indoor heating. We had hot water heat all through the house. And that was the first time.
And was there gas lanterns yet or not? Gas lights?
Well, no, we had electricity.
Electricity.
Oh yes.
So this was a really modern house.
This was a modern house, yes, because we had an electric company down there that produced the electricity, and they had it the old fashioned way, which was a steam engine and a belt to a generator, and that generated the electricity for the surrounding town there, around the town. I don't know how far it went out of town, but
Right.
at least for the town itself, they had electricity.
Well,
Yeah.
was your house an unusual house in that town, or a lot of people had those conveniences?
Not at that time. It was unusual for that time, yes.
So do you
But,
remember do you remember
Later
being,
on, there were other homes built that had the modern conveniences, yes.
Do you remember being excited about those conveniences,
Oh,
or
more or less, yes. I more or less
do you have any funny experiences with them? Like
very
the
excited. Well,
toilet or the bathtub?
except that the lights would go out every once in a while when the belt would jump off, and the lights would go out. And then a little while later on, it'd come back on again. But they were just what they call the incandescent lights. Shortly after, well, I don't know exactly the date that Edison invented the electric,
No,
light,
that was shortly after
but it
that.
was shortly after that became the commonplace for to have incandescent lights.
So we'll have to talk more about North Fork, but so you've moved there about 8 years old, and do you remember about how many years you lived?
Well, we lived there
North
from
Fork.
there we lived in North Fork from 1904 to 1915.
So most of your school years were spent in North Fork.
That is the grade school years were spent in North Fork, and the 2 high school years. I graduated from the North Fork High, but we had graduation in our elementary school at that time too. and I graduated in Welsh. Well, Annie and her husband were living at that time, moved down to Welsh, and he was in politics also, Walker. He was the county assessor, and they lived they lived about a mile and a half outside of Welsh, and they lived down there for a number of years. While he was county assessor, then he ran for sheriff, county sheriff, but he lost out.
But
And
go ahead.
Yeah?
But your father did make, he got this, right? He became county.
He became the county. He was in
Commissioner?
politics. He was the county court, what they call a county court commissioner for well, for let's see, from 1902 till 1914, about 12 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who else lived at your house then?
Uncle
while
Frank.
Uncle Frank.
Uncle Frank lived with us, still lived with us, yes.
And a maid.
And we had a well, we didn't call her maid. She was a cook. She used to do most of the cooking, and her name was Mary Didik. D-E-D-I-K.
Had she come over from another country?
She was a Slovakian. And then we had we had various ones to bring things up and down. We had a colored fellow by the name of Sam Clark that used to bring up the ice, and we used to get 50 pounds of ice about every week, maybe a couple times a week. We had an ice box.
So he had to bring it up like this?
No, they had to bring it up in a sack. They brought it up strung over the back on a sack and dripping down over their back. Yeah, they used to manufacture ice at this. It was North Fork Electric and Ice Company. They manufactured ice there. They had the facilities for making ice.
Right, right.
Which at that time were very crude, but they used to bring up a 300-pound cake of ice out of one of these cells where they had there. All along there they had these cells. They'd pick up this ice and bring it out in a big container. Then they'd run this container through a water jet machine that was through water against it to melt this ice. Then the ice would come flying out of this thing and go out into the storage part.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we go down there and get 50 pounds of ice at a time.
Right. Did your family used to make ice cream?
Oh yes, we used to make ice cream. Yeah.
What other types of food? We were talking about this yesterday.
Well,
what other types of food? What was special? You know?
Well, special. But the only special that we had down there was pig's feet, pickled pig's feet.
That was a treat.
Yeah, that was a treat to go down and get a pickled pig's foot.
Did you have animals when you lived in any
A
animals?
dog. Oh yes, yeah, we had a dog. And
But
a bulldog.
Right.
Taylor, Mike. Mike was his name. We had one before him, and his name was Taylor. When we were up at the one that used to get in the fights.
The one that used to
Well,
run along the street.
his name was Taylor. Yeah, the one that used to chase the engines. And but we had Mike in North Fork.
Tell me about your other animals.
Well, one time my dad come home from where he was working, and it was in the wintertime, and he had an overcoat on, and in one pocket he had a puppy dog, and the other pocket he had a little monkey, chimpanzee,
A chimpanzee?
which had been down at one of his friends that had a saloon down in Welsh, where I told you, had this saloon, and they had this monkey in there, and the patrons used to come in and tease it. They'd light a match in front of its nose, and its nose was pretty badly burned, and so he took it home. And we doctored the thing up, and we kept it.
And it was friendly?
Oh yes, yes, very friendly. I made a little cage for it out of a little packing box and some slats. Made a cage for it, and we used to keep them down the cellar.
And then you used to bring, could he be left open too? You can say something.
How about the ferret?
Well, we had a couple ferrets too. A couple, we had all kind of animals.
Ferrets or
We had
something?
chickens, and we had,
The ferrets lived in the house?
the ferrets we had lived in, yes, we had a place for them in the house. And we used to take them out, and you could pet them. They were smoky, sort of a smoky color. They're not brown, but they're real light, sort of a light smoky color.
Mm-hmm.
We had two. I had a pair of them, but they finally got away from us. They used to hunt for mice or for rats. They used to be great ratters. Ferrets are great ratters, you know.
Right.
And they'll go right in the hole right after a rat.
Did you
But
mostly
they were tame. They were tame.
They were tame.
Oh yes.
Did you mostly take care of the animals?
I
were
did,
They were
yeah.
mostly your
Most of
animals?
my responsibility. Well, most of the time, I fed them, and then we had some chickens. We used to have chickens, and Pop used to be bringing home a chicken every once in a while. Sometimes it'd be a Rhode Island Red, some Rhode Island Reds, or there was another name of that black chicken. Some Plymouth Rocks. We had Plymouth Rocks, Rhode Island Reds, and a variety.
All running around the house.
Oh, running
the
around, yeah, up around the hill, but they were always there in feeding time. They always come back at feeding time.
So when you weren't in school, did you spend most of your time playing with the different animals, or
No,
what would you do for?
well, I had friends down there, and we used to. A lot of my time was spent tramping up in the hills. We used to tramp up on the hills an awful lot of our time.
Was it woodsy?
Oh yeah,
Wooded hills?
very, very, very woodsy. Yeah, and we'd climb up the hill there for maybe a couple hours at a time, and we'd always manage to get back by supper time.
Right. Do you remember much about school?
Well,
In
at that
North
time we had a two-room school there, and they had practically all the grades from kindergarten to I think it was the fourth grade, and they were taught by a Miss Tony, and that was in one room. And in our room, we had from the fifth grade to the eighth grade, fifth to the eighth grade, and that was taught by Mrs. Huddleston at one time. And then we had another teacher there. When she left, they had a man teacher, Mr. Jenkins,
Mm-hmm.
and that brings us up to about 1913. And
What did you like in school? Were there any subjects that you particularly?
history
History.
and geography,
What did you not like?
math. I never cared much for
That's how you
math,
got together with Nana.
and that's how I wound up with math, bookkeeping.
Right.
But
What, do you remember? What was? Do you remember any particularly happy times or happy things that happened to you when you were about that age, either at home
Well,
or school, or
when,
anything that sticks out in your mind that was something that you
that
remember?
I remember in particular? No, I don't remember anything exciting. But
Anything bad?
I joined the Scouts in 1912. When I was in the Scouts for a number of years, I got up to be a second-class Scout. I didn't get up to be first class because we had a scoutmaster there who was he used to work in the drugstore, and his name was Billy Morton. And he was the only guy that I knew that had a bicycle. I never owned a bicycle. And I used to borrow his bicycle and ride around every once in a while.
That seems like something you would have had.
You think I would have had it, yes, but I didn't. No.
Did you just
But
get,
in my younger days, I was more or less, after I got into the Scouts, I got interested in wireless. I was always interested in wireless, and trains, boats. Of course, we didn't have any place around there that you could ride a boat, or you could sail a boat or anything like that. There was nothing.
How did you
like,
get-
or even a rowboat.
how did you get interested in boats? I mean, since there wasn't any place.
Well, I don't know.
Building
I just
models or
just
something?
models. I used to like to make models. I used to have a well, for my birthday or Christmas, I used to get Meccano sets and erector sets and stuff like that. I used to like to play with that kind of stuff. And I had about the only train, I guess, train and track that was down around there.
Mm-hmm. So,
I used to like to play with that a lot. And I had friends that we used to play around with.
you mentioned Christmas. Were there,
Well,
you had pretty good Christmases.
We had Christmases, very nice Christmases, and the bang up 4th of July's. We always had oodles of fireworks for the 4th of July.
What, the whole town? Or
Practically, no, we used
your
to
family?
we used to celebrate, right, no, just the family. We used to send to Baltimore for a case of fireworks, and it was big enough to last us the whole day.
Who started that? Your dad or your
Huh?
uncle? Who was the
Papa.
first person interested in that? Your dad?
For Pop, yes, he was, the first thing on 4th of July, he'd get a 10-inch cannon cracker and take it out and put it under a dishpan and put it off to wake everybody up. And we used to have all kinds of fireworks. We had even hot air balloons.
Yeah?
Yeah, we had hot air balloons, that is paper balloons. These things would stand about 6 foot high, and they had a ring around the bottom with a core of excelsior that was impregnated with kerosene, I think. I think that's what it was. You'd light this thing, and the hot air going up into this thing would inflate this balloon, and away she'd go. We never knew where she landed.
You could put the monkey in there.
No, no. That was all it was to these balloons. It was just a big hoop in the bottom and cross wires, and at the middle of these cross wires there was this bundle of excelsior, impregnated excelsior. That had I think it had kerosene or some sort of
Right.
a fluid of some kind that would ignite, and it just have a flame, and the flame would be hot, and the hot air from this would fill this balloon up until it it's go up by itself, float away by itself.
Right. See, were you the rich kid in this?
No, oh no, not by
No,
far.
you weren't. You sound like
No, there were
DashStori.
others down there. There were boys down there that were their fathers were saloon keepers. We had about just the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 saloons in North Fork, and Keystone had a mile below us. They had more than that. They had a saloon about every other store would be a saloon. That's how that was.
What do you have any
But-
idea about what?
And
your,
those were the ones that had plenty of money. They had plenty of money too.
Do you have any idea about how much your father made as a commissioner? Or not really?
No. I haven't
Parents-
any idea.
Parents never talk about
Around it was maybe a couple $1,000 a year or something like that. But then a dollar used to go pretty far in those days.
Right.
As far as I know, the house that we built there cost $6,000 at that time. It was an all-frame house.
Did you didn't ask this before, but you didn't have any grandparents around.
Not down there, no, they were all up in Pennsylvania. See, you were from Pennsylvania.
So on both sides of the family, grandparents were
No.
up in Tremont.
Up in Tremont, they had died before I was born.
All right, so you never knew any of your grandparents.
I never knew them. Never
So
knew
it was
anything.
just the family
Just the family.
that was there. Was was your sister? She was out of school. I guess she got
Oh,
out
yeah,
of school when you
yeah.
were in Northbrook. So did she work and live at home, or
She
just
was
lived at
she was
home?
a housewife. She
That
was
was
married.
Ann. But
Yeah,
how
that
about
was
the
Ann.
other sister?
No, she lived with Emma was single. She always was single.
Right. Was she living at home at this
Yeah,
time?
she lived at home.
Was she working or
No,
she?
yeah, she worked. There was a man come down there from Lebanon, and he opened up a ladies' apparel shop there. A man by the name of Hauer, Hauer, and his first initials was HB, and she worked for him. He had a store down there, HB Hauer.
So she was a saleswoman for him?
Yeah. And she worked for him, and he was the one that owned the motorcycle that
Did that happen in Northbrook?
that happened in North Fork. Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about that story?
Well,
And how old you were?
I was. Let's see. That was the year before we come up here, I guess. And I was 18 when we come up here. When I was about 17. He had this motorcycle, and earlier in the summer, he had one, and it was a sort of a light machine that I rode around on quite a bit. He used to let me ride it as much as I wanted to. And then he sold this one later on in the summer and bought another one, a heavier one, what they call an Indian big twin motorcycle. And it was very heavy. It weighed over a couple 100 pounds, I guess. And I was riding this thing. This was in August, the year that we moved up here in 1915. That was in 1915. It was in August 1915 that I took it out one night about, I guess shortly after dark, which I shouldn't have done because I wasn't accustomed to riding the thing at night. And I was going to go down to a place down below us about a mile, turn around and come back again. Well, I got about halfway down. I was up on the hill going around a curve, and the thing dropped into a rut because we didn't have paved roads in those days, all dirt roads, and
Right.
and
No
wagon
cars.
ruts. Wagon ruts were that deep. And I dropped into this wagon rut. I had been riding the Crown, that is, in between the ruts, riding the
Right.
Crown. But somehow I got over to the side, and I dropped into this wagon rut and lost control of it. And it flipped over on me and caught my leg underneath the step. Broke it.
Right. Broke it a couple,
Broke
one place,
Two.
two places?
Broke both bones, yeah.
Were they like
Yeah.
a bad break?
My foot was going this way and I was going that way.
So did you end up, was there a hospital there?
Well, the hospital was in Welsh, but as luck would have it, a colored boy come along I was at the time I was working at a bottling company, and this fellow was working there too. This colored fellow, he was one of the big. He did all the heavy work, and he just happened to be coming along there, coming down this road, and he saw me. I was lying over on the side there with the motorcycle running, and I shut the thing off, and but I couldn't get out from under it because it had me pinned down. And he lifted the thing off of me, and I said, "Get it out of the way, get it over there so that nobody runs over it. It's not mine." So he got me over there, and by that time, another couple boys coming up from the other side, from the Burke side. And between the two of them, we started to walk back to North Fork, which was about a half a mile away. But luckily, we had only gone a few paces when another friend of mine that was running taxi come along.
Oh, it's a
And
taxi. You mean a carriage?
No, it was an automobile.
Oh, it was?
An automobile. And he come along, he had a fare down to Burke, and he was coming home. And he come up there and picked me up and took me up, and he took me into Clark, which is across the road from North Fork, and took me to the drugstore there. And they got in touch with the folks, and they come down and got me over to the station, and managed to get a stretcher of some kind, got me up to the house. And they called the doctor, Dr. Clark, and he come down and set my leg that night and put it in a box splint. The next day I had to go to the hospital. Then they had to take me down and break it over again. And then they put me in a cast.
Right.
And I was in that cast. Well, I had 3 different casts on. I don't know whether this is interesting enough to you or not. But I had to go down there 2 or 3 times. They had these casts taken off and a new one put on.
Right.
And they said at that time that I'd always have a stiff ankle. But I worked with that thing until I got it going.
Right.
But
Right.
I'm getting ahead of myself on that.
All right, we'll go. Well, that reminded me of something else I wanted to ask you. What type of jobs did you have, beginning with the first little job you might remember? I mean, even just a job as a schoolboy.
Most of the time I sold papers. I had the exclusive agency for the Saturday Evening Post down in that section. And I used to get 75 copies of the Post every week, and I'd sell them around the town, around North Fork. And I used to also, when the trains would come through there, the trains had stopped. Sometimes they'd stop long enough for passengers to unload baggage and stuff like that. I'd go through the train, maybe 1 or 2 cars, and sell some Post if I could. But most of the time, I had customers for most of my papers, posts. But then I'd have to sell the rest of them if I didn't get rid of them. I couldn't return them.
So that was while you were in school. You were doing that.
Yeah.
And then, did you have any other jobs at all while you were still in school?
Well, in the summertime, I used to work at this bottling company.
What did they bottle?
Soft drinks. Soft drink.
And that was in
The
North Fork?
North Fork Bottling Company. Mm-hmm.
What did you do there?
Well, I used to cap bottles, put the labels on them, wash them, all that kind of business.
Do you remember how much you made when you were doing that?
I don't know. No, and then Saturdays, we were closed on Saturdays, and Saturdays I'd work at a big mercantile store there and get $1 a night.
You worked there in the evening?
I worked there from 4 to 8.
What were you doing at that?
Selling whatever I could, anything I could put my hands on, it would sell.
Okay, so, you didn't have a car down there?
No, but I was crazy about cars. I hung around down there over in Clark, where I had a friend by the name of Blake, and he used to drive taxi. He taught me how to drive a car, an old Ford Model T.
That must have been when cars were first around.
That was when I first come down there.
Right.
Yeah. But I was always more or less interested in automobiles.
Well, you were interested in mechanical things.
Mechanical things, yeah, mostly.
Were you,
And wireless, I was crazy about wireless.
Did you end up having one
During
of
the
those?
time, see that, now, that was in 1912 when the Titanic went down. From then on, I was crazy about wireless. I used to buy all the stuff I could get to make, I never did get a set
Right,
to work, but I used to dabble around in it anyhow. I used to love to do it.
right, right. Did you have any other hobbies that you enjoyed, like reading or?
Well, I used to
Any
read.
kind of-
I used to
any-
read an awful lot of popular mechanics, popular electrics, and Scientific American. All those magazines I used to buy at the drugstore and
Is
read
that-
them.
Well, at that time when you were doing all the reading and the different things you were interested in, did you have an idea of what you thought you wanted to do for work?
Oh,
Did you
no,
have any,
I
were you
hadn't.
thinking about the future at all then,
Making,
or not?
no, not the way they figure things out nowadays. No, and
Right.
nothing to. Not looking forward to anything. I was just anything that I could make a living of.
Right. Were there any sport things that you were interested in or doing? The
Baseball.
Softball teams?
I used to like baseball. I used to play a lot of baseball.
Yeah,
But we never had any other thing. No football because we didn't have any facilities for football.
right.
No place big enough to play football. They used to, well, when when I was in high school, we had a professor there, Dr. Stephen B. Dolly, and he was a graduate of the Virginia Military Academy. And he used to be very much interested in football. In fact, he tried to teach us how to play football. But we were a sorry lot when it came to that.